Hey guys, welcome back. There are several dangerous people in South African politics. People like Jacob Zuma, for example, the ex president and now the new leader of the MK party, a man that oversaw probably one of the biggest declines in South African history. And thanks to the inaction of President Cyril Ramaphosa, or perhaps the cooperation of President Cyril Ramaphosa, the country is still reeling and failing as a result of that famed presidency in South Africa's history. Julius Malema is another figure that we can look to and say, really dangerous man. But perhaps there are no people in South Africa more dangerous than Floyd Shivambu. Just want to say a huge thank you to all of the supporters and patrons of this channel. By becoming a member or a patron, you help support the news that we bring and also allow me to do even more in the future. So huge shout out to all of you. Thank you. Anyways, enjoy the video. Bye. Now, Floyd Shivambu is an interesting character exactly because I believe he differs fundamentally in one key aspect to people like Jacob Zuma and Julius Malema. Now, Jacob Zuma is pretty easy to understand. He is a looter. He cares only about enriching himself. He doesn't really have an appetite for, shall we say, revolutionary action. He showed that during his presidency. He didn't, in fact, turn the entire country socialist or communist or even nationalize most of the businesses in South Africa. He was happy to continue to let capitalism do capitalism things whilst being able to skim off the top and sometimes skim to the point where we now have, and that's a story we're going to be doing later today, because Eskom is in serious trouble. But Jacob Zuma wants to enrich himself, wants to enrich his friends and family, and basically he will become a communist and he will introduce communism and socialism in South Africa if there is sufficient profits in doing so. Another character that I, for a long time, and I think many people for a long time thought was going to be the man that caused a massive, massive amount of suffering in South Africa was Julius Malema. Julius Malema came on the scene after being sort of kicked out of the ANC, starting the EFF, and the violent rhetoric sort of followed very quickly thereafter. Julius Malema was disenfranchised with the ANC, with Jacob Zuma, and what he deemed their inaction. Shortly after the EFF's formation, though, it became very clear that Julius Malema was also not really in the business of violent coup d'etats or violent sort of revolutions. He was also just in it to enrich himself. This was thanks to the VBS scandal, where we learned that Julius Malema, as well as Floyd Shivambu and others of the EFF, made tons of illegal money out of this bank that was supposed to be for the people and by the people. Floyd Shivambu, again, is a different character entirely. It should be noted that Floyd Shivambu and Julius Malema were childhood friends. They both joined the ANC Youth League at a very young age and came up together. This is why they left together. Floyd Shivambu then, at the formation of the MK party, decided to leave the EFF and join the MK party. Now, I believe the reason for the joining needs to be understood in order to understand this man. He joined the MK party because the MK party is meant to be the military wing of the old apartheid or anti-apartheid movement. And I believe that Floyd Shivambu thought that this MK party was going to do exactly that. Military action within South Africa to take back the country as he sees it. He had very harsh things to say about the EFF, very harsh things to say about Julius Malema, and all of it came down to they don't take action. They don't actually care. He worked his way up in the MK, eventually becoming the spokesperson for the MK party, and then he was dismissed from the MK party. And then after meeting with, they call him a prophet, but it's more like a charlatan, Bashiri, that has been expelled from South Africa and currently has a lot of charges pending against him. He flew to Malawi in order to meet with this prophet. This prophet is a man that sort of has a lot of dangerous utterings. The MK party wanted none of that. They didn't want the heat that would come from that, the investigations, and so they removed him as spokesperson, and they sort of said that they're going to put him in parliament. this was a move that he would not stand for. And I believe it becomes clear when you focus on his new political leanings, his new political movement. So Floyd Shivambu is currently in the process of starting a new political party. The party is called Maya Boyo Consultation Team, at least for the moment, and they are going to consult with democratic elements of South Africa to figure out whether or not there is, in fact, an appetite for what he deems to be a necessity. And this is where your blood should run cold. This is what Shivambu said in his official document laying out what he deems to be the future of South Africa. It is now time for a 21st century liberation movement that mobilizes the entire society for total freedom, drawing inspiration from anti-colonial revolutions in the Sahel region in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. All three of these countries have experienced coups in the past 5 years. Shivambu argues that this is a blueprint to reclaim sovereignty, unity, and dignity, and that South Africa urgently needs to adopt it. It's very interesting that you understand that while a lot of leaders, like, for example, Julius Malema, will say things like kill the boer, kill the farmer, and there's a big danger in leaders saying stuff like that, Julius Malema and the fact that after almost a decade, well, more than a decade, in fact, of the EFF existence and the EFF actually now losing support, the fact that he's still not actually gone to violent extremes tells you that he has no interest in it. He's a career politician. He's making pretty big bank. He says what he needs to say in order to get elected. And look, if that does lead to a revolution, and that revolution does lead to the EFF becoming the ruling party of South Africa, then that's great. But he himself will not be the one to start that. And I believe that's exactly where Floyd Shivambu comes from. That's why he left the EFF. Because while, yes, he was involved in the VBS scandal and he did make a lot of money because, hey, cadres need to eat, fundamentally, he wanted violent revolution. The same is true for the MK party. They were not going to do the violent thing because all of them are only in there to loot. They're just there to enrich themselves. Floyd Shivambu wants to enrich himself, but he wants the ultimate riches. Remember, there isn't a dictator in Africa alive that isn't stupidly rich. So Floyd Shivambu does want to be rich, but this document pretty much straightforward lays it out. He wants revolution, and not just a spoken revolution, not a democratic revolution, although he does use words like democratic revolution. What he means by that is to mobilize the people, the democracy, in order to sort of enact a coup d'etat. This is dangerous. One thing that's super important to note to really drive this home, in a book called Coup d'etat, a Practical Handbook by Edward N. Lutwyck, he explained how, after looking at coup d'etats that happened in Africa over the last 100 years, how 5 to 10% of the population in every single instance was able to pull off a successful coup d'etat, because fundamentally the overwhelming majority of people in a country does not want to fight. And so if they're told to do something, they'll simply do it in order to preserve the peace. 5 to 10%. That means that Floyd Shivambu doesn't need that much in order to be successful. And that is ultimately why taking sort of note of someone like Floyd Shivambu is super important, because he's a man on the outs. He's been pushed out of every single political movement in South Africa. And I believe he is a man that desperately wants power. Anyways, let me know in the comment section down below how you feel about Floyd Shivambu, the changes, and how these changes may affect us in the future. As always, hit the like if you liked, the dislike if you didn't, and I'll see all of you in the next one. Peace.